The next time you're outside in your backyard, in a park, in a trail, take a seat, go into your meditation, but this time pay attention to the sound and the resonance that the airplanes emit when they begin to pass your overhead. If you're fortunate to see helicopters, pay attention to the sound and resonance to the passing helicopters. When you see flies, pay attention to how flies or even mosquitoes begin to appear within your field. Do your best not to predict or to judge or to, when I say judge, I mean to label and to know, for example, this fly is here, so now I'm being remotely viewed. And this is especially for those who work within that field of resonance within their journey. Simply pay attention to that of a child or to that of someone who's innocently seeing butterflies also within your vicinity. Train your 5 extraordinary senses by placing complete attention to how these sounds impact not just you, but the environment around you. Again, without trying to paint on the canvas of what I'm attempting to enlighten within this video. Allow for the canvas to paint itself. And by doing so, it means to being one. And in Chinese, they call it the state of Wuji, the great void, the great emptiness. Wuji as in W-U-J-I. Wuji is a state of arriving. Meditation is a state of arriving. While there may be over 10,000 techniques to attempt to arrive towards Wuji, while one may consider taking a Tai Chi class or a Xingyi class or a Bagua class as an example, or any style of Kung Fu that intelligently integrates the outside systemic way of training, as in Qigong forms or Kung Fu forms or fighting strategies and techniques, and any intelligent style of Kung Fu, which is just about all of them. They allow for one to attain a level of stillness while movement. And within this interaction of training, there's also the question that the Sifu or the educator tends to bring towards one's attention when they're training something that's new to their embodiment, such as a new martial arts, is that how is it that you attain stillness while movement? How is it that you can move while remaining still? Now, this is natural, a very natural state, because as children, we were already born within this state, but because of indoctrination of many kinds, living within certain social norms, having to work, having to go to school, keeping your embodiment almost like entertained within the canvas of the painting of what society and social norms have painted for you. And now we find ourselves almost like that game that children play now, Roblox. It's like, yeah, you have an ability to create, but you're creating these pizza places, these places of hanging out, or your own home, but it's always in the construct of a creation, again, of a canvas that was illuminated to you when you were birthed here. By paying attention to these airplanes, you start to enliven your original sense of Kung Fu, which in the Vedic system, they would call it your karma. Your karma has also been denatured as in more of Americanized way of saying you're in sin. This is your karma. You did something harmful to me. This is my karma. But many don't understand that if you go into the deep understanding of what karma means within its basic nature and structure as how it was created, the term karma, is that karma is simply that you were birthed here. Your karma is that you are experiencing a reality of who you are, who you're creating yourself to be, or who or what is allowing to create your experiences here, right? I was 19 years old and I decided that I wanted to drive a car. I was 19 years old. I didn't have a car. My mom didn't have a car. We didn't have cable. We were born very, very poor. It was just my mother and I. And so again, it wasn't that somebody was teaching me, but the canvas of the way that my mom lived and the way that she created a life, and I was born into that as an example, is that I wanted to free myself, and I wanted to be able to drive anywhere that I wanted to, because living in New Jersey, as I was raised in New Jersey, depending where you live, which is most parts, you really can't get far and arrive to too many places quickly as in your favorite shopping center, let's say, right? Imagine taking a couple buses to go to Whole Foods, because you want to go to Whole Foods, you know? And that's a possibility. But at 19, I wanted to, well, Whole Foods didn't exist when I was 19. But if it did, I would have wanted to shop certain foods, right? Plant-based jackfruit, right? Versus eating meat, as an example, these days. Versus maybe me making it myself, but at 19, I would have wanted to purchase it before I had learned, or wanted to learn how to do it myself. So the canvas of creation allowed me to create my little microscopic canvas to actually get my car, go to school, drive to college, right? I went to Rutgers University, and I did horrible my first year and a half there as an engineer major. Believe it or not, I didn't graduate becoming an engineer. I graduated with a different major, but that's another story. My mind was equipped to engineering and even architecture, but the training system was a canvas that my embodiment wasn't naturally allowing my experiences to be indoctrinated. And I didn't know that at 19, but yet I still got my car and changed majors, and I was able to drive, yet feeling free and wholesome for the time being. So imagine having the capacity of being born here, using creativity and imagination, that you were born here with somewhat of a knowing that you already knew, or one would know exactly the canvas that they would like to paint and create. It's so much simpler if you were born already with the powerful divine feminine within you, which is also the construct of your imagination, your creation mind, and so somewhat of the playful nature of just being in the moment versus projecting out and expanding the moment, which I would say just in this scenario would be the divine masculine, or just let's say the masculine. Many of us were born not even seeing a separation until we were taught that this is the way this guy is supposed to travel. Was taught, even though I was training in an esoteric style of Kung Fu, that if you don't fight and defend yourself a certain way as a dude, you're gonna get your butt handed to you really quick, no matter how many years you train. So now, again, based on, which is neither good or bad, based on the canvas of the structure of what's the truth and what your teacher sees as the truth, you start to enliven and become molded. Your reality gets molded because of the choices that you make and the discipline that you find yourself in. But most importantly, the alignment that you see yourself in, which brings to you a level of coherence. You are now one, or one would be now in coherence with all of the disciplines that one would engender, such as now I drive my car. I'm no longer thinking about driving a car. I'm no longer testing like training wheels to train to learn how to drive a car. It's natural, right? I drive just like you would anywhere without even thinking of how to turn on the car. So again, this is neither good or bad, but let's go a little deeper. The artist, the true artist that was born as someone who draws or sings, they tend to have commonly within that collective, they tend to have challenges being born into this world, because this world requires one to generate a certain type of an income depending on where you live. If you were fortunate to have been born into some ranch or farm, then kudos to you. But this is not the majority. This is not the collective of the majority, and you have to, and you must remember that when the majority is indoctrinated a certain way, then the majority is who or what is painting the canvas of your experiences. There are laws, right, that may not serve your highest good or mine. There may be laws that if I did buy, or when I purchase, let's say, my acreage of land, and I want to create something of that nature, I have to see what the laws entail for me to be allowed or to have permission to create my canvas. So now my canvas becomes altered or manipulated simply based on structures and rules and laws, quite possibly before you were even born. Then I decide to go rogue and I find myself creating what I want. But again, it's a vessel of some form of limitation that makes it almost like an imprisonment. Yet you would say that you're free, but it becomes somewhat of a sense of freedom, but also a bigger challenge, because now you have to build things from the ground up, and many people have failed within this reality, and this is why they make or create so many movies about going rogue, which is something that a lot of people, especially young men, it's something that would satiate them when they're young, when they're free, especially if you grew up in the 90s. You feel what I'm saying? I grew up in the 80s and the 90s. So me and my boy, he's a brother to me, Lewis, we had the ability to take our bicycles and to just like ride anywhere. Did we almost get beat up several places? Yeah, we almost did, because we grew up in a place where it was gang infested, and there were many drug dealers and many territories, and where we wanted to play basketball in, because this is where the good courts were, or we found a couple of friends there, but we had to like watch our back, you know what I'm saying? So we rode our bike, and our fear was always like, are they going to steal our bike in front of us? Because that was very possible, actually, without going too deep of it. But one of our bikes got stolen when we were a little kid in front of our faces, and we couldn't do anything about it because we were outnumbered, as an example. You know what I'm saying? So it brought me to have to train even harder in Kung Fu. So to put this together, one is here to experience based on your imprint and based on where you're seated in birth, to see how energy works and how energy is manipulated to create in physical form, and how it actually molds you until you become conscious of yourself, and until you start to invoke I always say, your ancient remembrance as to the core of what brings you joy. Your ancient remembrance is always encoded within what is easiest, or what comes easiest to you. So if you just naturally paint somewhere, or if you're a natural cook, and you love to bake, but yet you never went to school for that, right? Or maybe you make a good cup of coffee, right? But you work a 9-to-5, or you work a company, maybe you're making good money, but you're constantly trading off your time, your origins of skill sets to that canvas of that employer, which is his or her dream that's created. And no bashing or judging them, but now you're kind of like plugging in and tethering into their reality, and then you do your best. Find yourself retiring, find yourself losing hair, or gaining too much weight, or maybe losing a lot of weight, right? And then you're saying, I'm retired and I'm free. What does that even mean, right? To a lot of us now that we're starting to remember, it's to go to your ancient self, which means simple. Just remember what brought you the most joy, and are you daring enough to start to incorporate and to expand. Now it's like the divine masculine of what is natural, but to expand is now to be in union with the masculine, is to see how can you create within your canvas of being in Wuji, as an example, to the ability that you can understand being in the state of Wuji is just simply meaning to be present in the moment of play, of creation. Maybe the joy of shutting down an entire business. There's many people who take pleasure in creating a business to helping people collapse investment portfolios or folios or businesses, and with the mindset and the structure to create something new brings many people great joy. So they might create a business based on that, right? So again, expansive nature has everything to do with its counterpart, which is a tool to the carpenter of collapsing and contracting, as an example, to bringing it back to its simplest form. And that's why engineering or architecture or even computer graphics, right, as someone would major in that, would understand certain bits in the most basic way, as far as developing coding or algorithms, right, and understanding feedback loops, negative feedback loops. And when an algorithm is not working to par, what does the engineer do, or what does the student do, or how is the student trained in school, is to debug and to see where is the error of what you've created. It could be tenuous, it could be annoying, it could be sometimes confusing, right? But once you start to train and engender the love of the greater picture, then you see no separation in that Kung Fu form of getting your program to actually work. Now you become like a scientist, because now you have your program that has been debugged, and your program has been coded to a level where you have created this program. Now how does this program computer graphics, right, equate to the market as to how are you going to be profitable, as an example, because you want to keep programming, you want to keep doing what you love to do. Again, this programmer, so smart, right, has to still comply to a canvas, I keep calling it a canvas, of what other programs have been created that may not be in a computer, but they're codings, because bringing it all together, your mind, your intelligent being works with codes. It's not separate than computer systems. What many have failed to teach us in kindergarten, because it should be kindergarten talk, and I say that in our new school, in New Earth, is that school is outside of us. School is every place but the classroom, at least until a certain age, because children need to understand nature and the sounds of airplanes, and I'm going to get to that in a second, as to why I even mentioned it from the beginning. Is that how do you train to be able to arrive to, never mind even saying Wuji, to the state of emptiness, to beginning to place that pen on paper with a dot, and to be in a state of muse, or amuse yourself to a point where, what am I going to write right now? And to allow the pen just to write. Now, now when you start writing, it might come out like garbage and jargon, but that's a way to activating an inner knowing. That is coding. That is coding, because this is how your nervous system is, or runs on programs of the mind. Now, what's the difference between the mind and a keyboard is that one is functional towards technology that has been created outside of us in the macroscopic reality that we are experiencing, but the engendering factors of us to be able to experience it as if it's palpable and that we're not separate, right? Because we haven't been taught that we were interconnected. We just have been indoctrinated and programmed in the mind to be just tethered in, to not even realize that there's a separation. Is that one is required at some point in their life to untether, to not just detach, but to clean one's slate, whether it's through purging, through diet, through fasting. The quickest and the harshest way is to, what I've said in several videos in the past, is to do what? Is to completely unplug from the system with complete reverence of self, to say, I love my system so much. I do it for school. I unplugged myself with real life just to go to engineering school for 4 or 5 years, right? And you do it for that, but you're doing it within the canvas of a system that was created for you. Will you dare yourself to do it for you? Will you go to school for 4 years and find yourself in a cabin? That's scary, right? It's scary because we were taught that it was scary. We were taught that that goes against the system. So the system outside of us is so intelligent, it already has computed, and it knows. People already know before you were even born here that these are choices that you're going to make, just like Roblox. Or any kind of like a video game of that nature. I would say Zelda, you know. So you can fight the system, but it gets you, again, being entertained into the system of play. You can build a new church, you can build a new school of science, you can build a new school of mysticism, as an example, because let's say I would do that, and then I will create a new school, right? But again, to being constructive, as I question myself, as I'm an engineer before, or I'm a person who's going to create this and align this within my heart, is the system that I'm creating complying with a canvas that doesn't resonate with my highest good, that doesn't resonate with the greatest good of all beings, the same? These are questions that people fail to ask themselves. They not necessarily fail, but many do not even think to sit down within levels of quietude to arrive to these questions. How do you arrive to these questions? It's natural. It's to no longer to comply of the coding system of the way you were taught, the way I was taught, and is to remember that what wasn't taught, what was natural, such as play, is to take a walk and to allow your mind to come into a sense of relaxation, because once you come into peace within your mind and your physical embodiment, which also means coming to peace with knowing how your somatic nervous system works, then you will begin to engender from the ethers, from the unknown, right? ideas that came from nowhere. And you all know that because I've had ideas that before I was an acupuncturist that I've never been able to perform or create. Those ideas kind of like went into the back burner, as a lot of people say, right? To the back of the mind. Is it ever forgotten? Maybe in the moment as I'm working and focusing on acupuncture school. But then when I find myself walking in the park for hours, as an example, or for days or for weeks, after having had gone through my personal purging in my own way, then I'm allowing to all of my 5 sensory systems to comply towards what brings me peace, what brings me to a level of quietude, what releases things that are no longer off me versus me trying to do the work to cut these cords. That's a school, right? And then you find yourself being a master at that school one day and you realize that there is no cord to untether once you start seeing the program behind the scenes, behind or over the veil. As one would say, is that there is no one particular way of seeing anything. Everything is all perspective. Now, when you align to your perspective in a logical, rational thinking way, but it comes and births into life, into as far as a dance, as an example. So yeah, the logical rationality of training how to be a ballerina, but then you kind of like lose yourself in the technique, and now you are able to brilliantly perform in front of a stadium, in front of hundreds, if not thousands of people. What separates that individual from us is, yes, it's the discipline and the hard work, but it's also them tapping in within their genetic predisposition of being in awe. And once that the heart is aligned to like the blood, sweat, and tears, also means that one, it's not that the sacrifice is that you're hurting yourself by bleeding, is that the result of bleeding or crying and questioning yourself through these really harsh training methods because your heart had lied to it, is that it brings you back to yourself. It's a mirror reflecting as to, should I continue on? And let's say you choose to, and you find now yourself gravitating to a place of a larger stage. Did you build a stage? No, the stage started to create because you started to engender a stage full of people who enjoy watching you dance because they have forgotten. They have forgotten how to dance and how to create beauty and how to allow for the emotional, let's say, instability as they're arriving towards their the template of what they wanted to create. They tend to, as let's say, fall short, or they tend to, as an example, as examples I provided in the past, create a dance that's within somebody else's passion and calling it theirs. Again, that's called work. So an audience starts to illuminate the dancer, and the dancer, as the dancer starts to dance more often now, begins to realize that the dancer becomes the shen to the needle of an acupuncture point. The heartbeat of the somatic movement no longer separate, and the people who have forgotten becomes union with you because you are remembering them, but they're also remembering aspects of you. So now the dance is no longer just you, the dance is you and the stadium. So that's how these very famous people who have this gift, many were born with this gift without thinking within the levels of how I'm speaking rationally, as far as the linear aspects, as how I became a great ballerina. That's not ballet. I think that was something else. Well, I don't know. I don't know how to dance ballet. See, I know nothing of it, and I would enjoy a beautiful dance and seeing somebody, because then I see a version of me, and it inspires me to now dance my kung fu, to work within the healing arts, and to implement a remembrance that although the templates are different from every single one of us, but there's something of becoming in union with something that's of heart, and that is simple. It is joy, it is love, it is compassion and empathy of self. It's not empathy and compassion for others without that being in union as well, meaning that that's why you're doing it for others, because it's the same for you. If you do not do that, then you become one or two things. You either become like the narcissist, because you do the opposite, because you're realizing that I'm not going to do shit for anybody. If I don't even know how to do shit for myself, and then you get lost in that for a couple of years, you might end up being a narcissist. So a narcissist is very powerful because they have force created something and have created 100% of an audience. Maybe it's one-to-one in a relationship, but they've mastered it because the audience has to dance with them. Because without that relationship, a narcissist cannot exist in that way to be labeled a narcissist. So again, where's the dance? Now the narcissist offers a mirror to the one who is offering compassion, but that one who has forgotten compassion for themselves would have immediately spotted a narcissist. It wouldn't have even had engendered to that level. That narcissist would have ended up maybe their patient, maybe just like a basic outer friend, or maybe that narcissist has gifts within like what you're engendering, and maybe they serve a purpose, but you're a mastermind. So now you see the mastermind of a narcissist and you know how to work with them. Again, that's if the narcissist has a gift, because there's many narcissists that I met in Ecuador that serve very powerful medicines. And when we came together, because I've experienced it to much profound levels, I think since birth, without speaking about my parents, I just did. I started to attract something that I didn't realize, is that I was not living in empathy and in compassion of self, yet that's all I offered to the world. So I became the sick empath, which is what I would argue, as far as Carl Jung would say, he painted a canvas. Again, that's his school, that's his canvas. So I'm going to interpret using the carriage of his terms and his words. We see I'm aware of this. I'm also giving credit to his working, but it didn't start with him. It was actually his dance as to how he came and worked with 10,000 patients. As to his words is that through failure, he tried to treat a whole bunch of alcoholics and none of them got better, right? And then he realized that God or source consciousness had to intermingle within his strategies of helping alcoholic patients. Hence now there's the birth of what? Alcoholics Anonymous, because he had a lot to do with that within the psychological structures of that. If I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong. So now as I borrow Carl Jung's concept that I, for the most part, endured being the sick empath, the narcissist came to actually heal me by provoking the very nature that created that, which was ancestral, which was the bondage that I chose to be birthed in. So instead of judging it and like hiding from it and leaving to another state in a country or another country to escape from it, you could do it all day, but you're escaping from a version of yourself that is required to remember you. And until it does, it becomes a lesson. It becomes karmic. Lessons are karmic. Again, within the way I'm painting right now, from my perspective, right, is that a lesson and karma is everything until your dharma, until you reach a moment that everything is simply creation, everything is simply all. And it means nothing that if I'm in awe and everyone around me is not in awe in the moment. So what happens there? Ponder on that one if you feel led to. So as you start to heal, and as I mentioned from my perspective and my experiences as a testimony, I guess, is that as I start to remember how my somatic nervous system required all of this learning to construct and to deconstruct, it did what? It taught me how in weakness and in power I'm able, again, and in weakness I'm able to expand, collapse, endure, suffer, smell great foods, be repelled by awful foods, get bitten by a whole bunch of mosquitoes, like I mentioned in the past couple of videos, which can be a rites of passage, as mosquitoes will remember you as to how weak they can create your auric field by bringing you down to a lower vibrational or vibratory field. So we are here to remember, if I'm attempting to bring it all together now, we are here to remember energy. And until we remember how to manipulate energy, energy will continue to mold and manipulate you, me, the same. Until you got molded into all these like interesting donuts and pretzels with a little bit of mustard, spicy mustard on a pretzel from Philly. Fire, bro. Sis, I see you. I always say that because I'm always calling everyone bro, and to me it's disrespectful to call a sis a bro, so I catch myself being like, yo bro, so sis, I'm seeing you again 2 times. Airplanes do not just fly, they're airplanes. They are in a frequency field. They work with energetics of sound resonance technologies, bringing a level of coherence for them to be able to engender a vortex of creation through the manipulation of not just air, but through the electromagnetic fields that allow for an airplane to truly work and to fly So as you start hearing, as I said in the beginning of this video, an airplane, listen to the aspects of how they fly versus them just simply flying in the way we were just taught that they're getting from, or they're going from destination A to B. Listen and feel how you would fly if you were able to emit the sounds that an airplane emits. Now, taking it further, as per my last video, the flies are coming to me, as in my last 2 videos, is that when you start to engender maybe a lower vibratory field, because you're becoming conscious to my field, because now I'm like getting dark. It's because now you're saying, why is this guy is always getting dark? He goes from light to dark. Sometimes he curses a lot. It's because I'm remembering you and me the same as mirrors, that once you hear and you see how one can actually manipulate another into going to the dark sounds and resonance of what it feels to be listening to Marcus's video, I want you to do the same thing to a plane. I want you to do the same thing when the mosquitoes come, when the flies come. There are going to be limitations, so eventually you're going to run after a while. Eventually you're going to want to leave the mosquito base. But just like the military, the bases can get what? They can get attacked. But you still train your base. You still train your plane of existence, where planes tend to leave a territorial base and enter another territorial base called the field of the ethers, or a different plane, P-L-A-N-E, right? Plane of existence. When you listen, what I'm asking you to do is to now awaken to higher dimensional fields within the lower dimensional field construct. It's very important. It's the basis. It's the basis of, like, you're going to learn how to fight in Kung Fu. You're going to start with a horse stance and the harder styles of Kung Fu. And most people fail. They're like, I'm not going to hold that horse stance too long. That's really hard, because that brings you down to a lower field of a somatic construct that your body wants to do what? It wants to quit, or it wants to fear. It feels guilt or shame that it's, or you may not be strong enough, right? Or as an example. So, but once you start to graduate again this movement, because a horse stance is no movement, but your mind will start moving rapidly. You're going to say 30 seconds. Is it a minute yet? Is it a minute yet? Like if I tell you to do a horse stance for a minute, right? As an example, you're going to, after 30 seconds, your body may shake because it's your first time doing it. And you're like looking at me like, is it a minute? What the hell? Is he lying to me? I think he's making me do 3 minutes. Oh my gosh. And you're ready to like fall out. Why are you? Because your mind is running rapid. Your mind is programmed to work uninhibited, no different than a plane that's flying without being interconnected to the function of the plane. So if you're not interconnected with the function of your mind, then you're never going to understand the harmonics and sound and resonance, and how your mind will create and emit the birth of a sound that will change the harmonics of your very presence of experience. And what you see outside of you is the external or the artificial light, and how you're perceiving. And that's why they call the light bringer Lucifer. They attribute an entire demon as how people start to interpret using a childlike mind of reading books versus seeing codex or codices in any scripture, is that we are all born into sin, right? Meaning that everything you see outside of you, even when you kiss a girl or boy, or you lick or you try ice cream, or you eat food, all of it is an experience using your 5 extraordinary senses, which was attributed to as dark and evil, because that is Luciferian. That is the one who brings something to the light. It's happening within your construct, and it's evil because you're not aware of it. It's evil because you're not paying attention to the plane, and it's evil because you're not remembering how your mind is manipulating your outside world, and how you attract the sick empath or the sick narcissist, which are obsidian mirrors. Almost like if there's such thing as a twin flame connection, that is the twin flame connection. They are bringing within 2 fields. If 2 human souls, the pure narcissist and the pure sick empath, if they could come into union, and it doesn't mean physical form, but in union of no longer separating the way the mind flies, different frequencies, by simply paying attention and receiving my message, as an example, wink wink, then one will first need to train how to fly. But if you can't walk, if you can't hold the Kung Fu stance for 2 or 3 minutes, how are you going to be the dancer or the ballerina in this style of Kung Fu, or in your body, or in your embodiment? So we are here to train our somatic nervous system, our central nervous system, which is the brain and spinal cord connection to all your entire spinal nerve innervation, spinal nerve innervation. And I'm speaking of very ancient remembrances that are encrypted into everything. Vedic system, yoga, Kung Fu, Tai Chi, as an example. Tai Chi is a form of Kung Fu. And other realities that the indigenous of many, and if not all cultures, they have protected, because there are many routes, but yet they all lead to the same. When you pay attention to the airplane, you're going to hear sounds. Maybe not the first day, maybe so. You are going to hear sounds that make no sense. You're going to wonder, are they actual real airplanes? Are they alien crafts? Because in a sense, they are using technology of how alien crafts work, just in a different template. But how do you understand the different template if we didn't even understand the template of how a plane works? And I'm not saying go to school to learn how a plane works. I'm saying to go to school of your mind. That all technology that has been created as a reflection of how you work as a coder, or how you are one who becomes encoded when you are not remembering that you are the one co-creating this reality, that you are the one engendering everything that you hate. You are the one engendering everything that you love, because anything that you love to different experiences, like, oh man, I love this a little bit more than that, I love that a little bit less than this, I love her but I don't love that other person, right? That's not love, that's an experience, because love serves no conditions. Love is unconditional. Love has been bastardized, such as the term karma, right? And again, it doesn't exist to the one who can listen to the sound of the plane. When you hear the field of the plane, you're going to hear more planes. When you hear more planes, you're going to see how they start to change and morph the field around you, because as these planes change the toroidal field of both the plane construct as it interacts with your toroidal field, as in your conscious field called the aura, or your biosphere or field, but also the earth that you're in the moment. What you're looking to do now, or what one would seek if you're still sticking around to this video, is that pay attention in a playful way as to how everything shifts. See how now the mosquitoes start to come, and no longer limited to the arrival of the, let's say, the flies to come as remote viewing, because it's true. Once you start to become conscious of the field around you, you're going to be conscious that there are many, many beings, and many, you would say, aliens, interdimensional, extraterrestrial, but also humans, because we're in a plane to think and to believe that humans are the only ones, and anything within our field is evil and corrupt. I'm not here to tell you they are or they're not. This is not the intention of this video. What I'm saying is to become aware that there are dimensional beings, such as air is its own consciousness. The 4 elements, this is why they entrap you within the 5 elements, right? Or the basic 4, but they emit the 5, but it is the 5: metal, water, wood, fire, and earth. Metal represents the ether, or the Aquarius information. As Aquarius, we're in the age of Aquarius, starts to pour back into the sea of Mother Earth, the sea of fear. So in Chinese medicine, fear and water, the kidneys, and your lower vibratory field is what gets governed, because the lower aspects of your fear becomes fear, as if your fear of drowning, your fear of flying, the fear of going through a car. Why are those fears real? Because you are changing planes of consciousness when you drive a car. You're changing your toroidal field, and it can, and if you haven't done it before, it disrupts the vibratory structure of the waters of your embodiment, and you'll drown in it until you remember that you're a master swimmer, no different than fishes into water, and you are here between land and air. We are the ones who are hybrid. We are the ones that work within the 5 basic fields of consciousness. And if you start to really go deep into the rabbit holes of each field of consciousness, as in air, they are actual very alien, because anything outside of us here that's in construct of the 3D is that of what? Is that of ancient technology. God made the world in 7 days, and on the 6th day he rests. I'm not going to go there. I could shoot scripture up and actually prove it so right, but I would also take it and show how the codices within the words of the story playback, because everybody falls in love with the story, and that's a sense of spell casting, that's mysticism. 101 is that any scripture, any Bible, if you fallen within the school of indoctrination of religion, or even politics, or even the education system, there's supposed to be schools to remind you how you become spellcasted into belief systems. And the whole point is that many of us are carriers of this remembrance to disrupt patterns by being present in it, maybe by being indoctrinated as I was, born into it. That's my karma. And then as I start to leave the system, I leave school, I'm no more getting trained under an indoctrinated system for a degree, you know? That's an example. Now, it's not that I hate that, it's that now I'm starting to engender a new system, maybe, a new school, right? And now, instead of fighting the old school's construct, maybe now more people are gravitating towards this school, giving one the accessibility, such as honoring free will. So once you honor free will, right, then you will be able to amplify your level of, or the level of the cohesive network of your expansion or your expansive consciousness. But again, I'm showing you something that has been missing within the great ancient needed remembrances of this knowledge and wisdom that's encrypted in many fielded systems, such as in Xingyi Chuan, Bagua, Tai Chi, Yoga. They all have truths. Scripture has truth. But you must now start to see how all truths impact the field of consciousness when you become conscious of the truth, because the Bible can't do anything until you read it. You become conscious of seeing the plane or hearing the plane. You become conscious when you start training in Kung Fu. But the difference is right now is that Kung Fu, unlike regular school, is that it's going to take what you are learning, because it's still school, and then now you need to apply it into your nervous system. And not only do you need to apply it there, you also need to apply it towards your the manipulation of your 5 senses, right? Seeing, feeling, hearing, and all of that. When you can come into complete, consistent, stabilized coherence, in a sense of neutrality, being in the moment, like a surfer is to water, in the perfect wave, and that surfer caught that one perfect wave, like that one frequency where he or she is in stillness and just no separation. There's just like no separation between that wave and that person. But that person honors that the wave will either crash or to complete, and that person will go back into that system and repeat it. Yet the system of that wave will never exist the same way or form anymore. But again, just like the water is reminding the surfer is also reminding the water that life can be beautiful when one is no longer bound to systems and formats that are archaic and ancient, that are ready, capable to collapse, because the time is now to start collapsing systems by birthing a system within you, within your construct. It should never look like anyone else outside of you. Nobody should even know that. Neither you, because you are the one, if not already, who is here to birth the levels of potentiality of who you are as a co-creator, becoming conscious of this holographic field of the synthetic matrix. I say synthetic because a lot of it came from the chemistry chart of natural organic materials, creating a sense of an inorganic experience, such as like having the grid work of having, not, but the grass is not fake, but the fakeness of like the unnatural sacred geometry and the respect of the ley lines of the agriculture, of how you would have grass in your own freaking front and backyard that was like almost like, okay, I'll say it like this. It's like I want to get a haircut with a hair type that I don't have. So I'm going to start shaving my hair bald. I'm going to start putting wigs, I guess. Or, you understand what I mean? That's what this grass is. So that's why I mean it's fake. The synthetic nature is that we are not honoring the field and the natural, cohesive, coherent structures of Mother Earth in the moment. So that's why this sick world is becoming sicker and more perverse, because it is a sense of perversity when you're not realizing the disrespect of the divine feminine of who she is. Fly. So she is emitting what one would say a negative feedback level of coherence to reject now, but not necessarily to reject. I'm going to retract that word. To purge a dying system, to allow people, myself, you there in front of me, to purge the same. Once you start aligning yourself to how fields become disruptive and distractive to Mother Earth, you will start to pay attention to how flies start to become emitted towards your field. And then the next level is that, without trying to believe me, but seeing for yourself and your own natural resources, which is using your 5 elements, and your sensory system, the same, because they are part of the 5 element, because they're not disconnect. Again, it's called the 5 element theory of traditional Chinese medicine. There's an entire 5,000 or 6,000 year old theory that has encapsulated the study using this. Yes, it's a school, but all schools are just like, whether it's church or whether it's education or whether it's kung fu. They're schools not to indoctrinate you once you're the one who's co-creating, but they're schools so that you can start using them as lenses, so that you can start seeing the state of how humanity is working within their fields. Again, if you're the dancer, or if you're, let's say, the healer, which is the realm that I dance in. I'm both, because dancers are also healers. They are the ones that bring the remnants of the dance of once they connect with the butterflies, the flies. They don't get attacked by flies or mosquitoes. I get attacked because I, in an attempt to educate and to bring structure into my conversation, I go into my lower vibratory field because it gets dark, right? But it's also, the flies are coming stronger. But it's also to show how energy works and how an enlightened being or an enlightened jaguar, as I said in my last video, sees in the dark. They're not creating something of majestic value outside of them. They're not disrespecting Mother Earth by creating technologies that are not at least in resonance with the ley lines of the earth, but also the ethers of the air, which has its own governing meridian path situates, which actually the ethers, you would say heaven outside of us, it's the child of the earth within our firmament. And so there's like the birthing of a capillary system from the central nervous system, from the meridian passageways of the earth and of a human being the same. Our meridian passageways, there's 12 major ones, and there's 8 extraordinary pathways, which is where the meridian path, which is where the energy path passes, which is where the energy passes through us. Well, it's not the same. It's just that we are not seeing or experiencing it. Again, and as the meridian passageways expand into the ethers, then there's an entire web-like structure, right? That spiders will illuminate what already exists within the spider's imprint. And so when a spider creates a web magically within seconds sometimes, that's the imprint of the moment that's in the ether, because the ether also represents, in my experiences, the World Wide Web, which is the capillary vessels, right? Because blood vessels, when they get thinner into your cellular structure, you have capillary vessels everywhere in your system. You know, they're all over the place. That's why they're not labeled individually, because there's so many. Well, the same thing with the earth. There's so much of this grid work, it becomes manipulated within the holographic field, within the ley lines, and within technology. And I'm trying to be fast because this video's long. This last part is that, so the intelligence of the outside factions are using this technology, because once you start to tap into you as being initially as just a receiver, then secondary to be the manipulator of changing frequencies of your own reception, so that you can see how and observe how energies are being constructed. So for example, I will attract a lot of flies, but then once I start to feel the energy that was created by the airplanes that actually created a frequency, so that I can be bothered, because I'm the one who was bothering their ley lines. I was the one bothering the ley lines of the surrounding factors that are actually being remote, not only just remote viewed, but also and using technology of science and DOD and all of these cats. They have a harnessing technology that's very ancient, and it's not new. It's just being rebirthed. New technologies from the old technologies are being birthed. It just means that the new technologies are the remembrances of old technologies. So as that's happening, it's more important now than ever, because that's called spiritual warfare now. That's a spiritual warfare of your mind, using sound and vibration and resonance. So the warfare is of this energy field. Once you can observe, and once you can come into coherence of how the airplane will attract a whole bunch of flies in my vicinity and presence, because I became conscious of it, even if I wasn't speaking about it, but I started to tap into it, then humans on the other side already tagged me. So it's already like, almost like it's already AI. It's not each person watching me. It's that the AI system already knows it is going to attract my way. So the flies will come my way. So this is good news, because now I can actually see how AI is working, let's say, against me to bring me back to a lower vibratory field, and to keep me in my plane. Just like planes need to be up there, Marcus has to be down here. Well, that's the notion. And for me, I say notion because it's no longer imprisonment. So as I now sit within my Wuji state, then I start to tap into, maybe for the first time, the birthing of that frequency. How do I know it's being birthed? Because now more flies come. So the challenge for me would be just like standing in the horse stance for the first time, is to stay in the stance, pay attention. Okay, didn't work day one, maybe 3 months later, 3 days later, you know, I started to tap into the resonance field. It's still within its infancy state. But now as I start to tap into it, I start to manipulate it and start to see how can I engender this into love. Okay, it didn't work when I did it, as an example. So what am I in disconnect with love? Well, because I'm stating love. How about if I just engender love and just be in that moment? Maybe it means to go into my favorite place, but this time maybe it means to go into my favorite place where I enjoy living, where I enjoy myself, right? And I'm in complete awe. So I go there, but now it's the multifaceted experiences of being one who remembers how energy works and how powerful your mind works. Is that now I'm flying my plane. Is that now I'm in that state, but I'm also inviting the state of the flies. And then I'm seeing the levels of coherence as to what can be changed with my dance and Kung Fu between the sparring of me and flies. Because now it's no longer fighting the motorcycle, it's actually riding with it. Even though the motorcycle is loud and annoying to Mother Nature, it could have been annoying to me, but to the rider, the one who's riding the motorcycle, they're one with it, and the noise means nothing to them. They don't even know the noise after a while. Same thing with mosquitoes. So it's important to understand how energy disrupts your pattern down here. And the challenge is that, so that your nervous system is no longer unbothered, is that you have to now, I would say, is to start to engender that as your Kung Fu stance. And in the way that I painted a picture, hopefully that my canvas looks somewhat of a pretty picture or a cute picture or something like that. And it happened to me for the first time actually today, which what brought me to this video, is that as I started to find this new frequency of my existence, the flies actually started to go away. There was one left, and mosquitoes, both of them, excuse me, I didn't mention mosquitoes. And then all of a sudden, they don't exist right now. They started to exist when I started to speak, because I needed to bring myself to a certain frequency, and then they come. So again, it's a surfer. Once you start surfing within these fields, then you become expansive. The most important thing is that once you at least master that, that's actually mastering the 4D in linear way of thinking. That's between the 3 and the 5. So that means that the 4D means that you're actually now becoming a 3D being. You're now becoming an actual human, a 3D being projected into the 4D of consciousness, which is how they are attacking us. Because for you to be able to be enabled, it means to go into your subconscious field. Nobody wants to go to a basement of a scary house, of a house that has been abused, manipulated over the years, such as my basement when I was young, as an example. Well, I wasn't abused physically, but I'm saying that as an example. Most females these days have been, unfortunately. And most men, it's unspoken of because we don't mention it, so we think that maybe none of us were, but that's not the case. It's just that we're not going to talk about it, right? So you have to be able to clean your basement floor. You have to be able to work with your shadows and allow them to present yourself. Again, my shadow could have been, I'm going to finish with this, my shadow could have been with the mosquito. Now who's remote viewing me? Now I'm attacking everybody around me. So now I'm still at war. But now I'm becoming conscious that I'm at war. And because I met Marcus, because now I attracted the person that's going to train alongside with me, as an example. Or I met the fly, because when I was ready, the fly appeared. The fly became my educator. Now the airplanes hovering over my head is coming. Now I'm seeing how this plane might not be at the same level of coherence that's actually infiltrating the resonance fields down here that were distracting my level of thinking, or attempting to, because that's how the AI of the ethers are working. And now I'm working with AI right now, because I'm AI. I'm ancient intelligence. I'm the original intelligence. That chip is only going to tether, for people who want that chip, it's only going to tether and manipulate who you are. This chip is just a chip of frequency. It's just a freaking chip. It's just a chip that goes on a computer. Who's the computer? And how are computers created outside of you, even quantum computers?